UCSF, a top 5 medical school, accepted this pre-med. A C+ in calculus, an institutional action for underage drinking, and most meaningful activities that included being a cycling instructor and a dorm resident assistant. A 3.67 science GPA freshman year and a 3.77 science GPA sophomore year. So, what did UCSF see in this pre-med, and how can his story help you get into your dream medical school? We'll talk about maturity, telling your story, and why being the best at generic activities like being an RA, a TA, or a cycling instructor can get you into the world's best medical schools. All right, another day, another medical school application breakdown. Today, we're gonna look at an application that got into a top 5 medical school in America. And the stats we're looking at is a 3.86 science, 3.95 non-science, 3.89 total, and a 516 MCAT. So certainly high stats, not the highest stats I've ever seen in my life, but certainly breaks and checks that stat box. This applicant ends up going to the fantastic medical school of UCSF, a medical school many folks, including myself, have not been able to get into. So let's take a listen and learn a little bit about what makes this application special. A couple of things here that I highlighted is number one is just ownership. There's a institutional action. There's a couple of gap years, in fact, 2 or 3 gap years. There are a couple of mistakes that the student makes along the way in judging other people, misunderstanding kind of rules and responsibilities on a college campus. And there are things that he gets in front of, accepts, takes full ownership of, and you can really see the maturity shine through from those decisions to tell the reader, hey, I'm not perfect, and I think that's okay. Here's what I learned from it. Here's what I do differently now. And here's why I actually appreciate that I made those mistakes. Which kind of brings me to this level of humility that permeates the entirety of this narrative. You'll never see that he is this hero of his own journey. He's really kind of along for the ride, doing his best and just appreciating the people around him as they teach him lessons and things that he picks up for his own character and his own learnings and takes with him to other activities. Which brings us to the second point right here. We do not learn from experience. It's not the experience that you have, but it's rather we learn from reflecting on experience. From John Dewey is a quote. And so I think that this application is one of the best that I have seen in taking what most people may believe is pretty standard experiences, but doing a great job of reflecting from them, taking everything out of them and sharing with the reader why the hours that he spent there, no matter if it was 50, 500, or 5,000, why those hours were helpful in shaping the person he is today. And we'll talk about 2 concepts that the AAMC has invented and permeated out there, but not a lot of things that like folks in the pre-med community are aware of, or at least take time to truly understand. So it's a little bit of a, I wouldn't call it a secret, but I do think it's a little bit of a nerdy admissions thing to really delve into these. But 2 things are the pre-med core competencies, which you may have heard in some way, shape, or form, as well as these past profiles, which I promise most of you guys have not seen before, and I think is actually one of the most helpful resources I have seen that the AMC put out. So for the pre-med competencies, there are essentially 17 things that the AMC believes are essential for success in medical school and in the field of medicine. A bunch of admissions committees, students, faculty, advisors all came together to develop these competencies, and they are at the core of many medical school admissions criteria. They literally search for some of these things in your application. And so some of them are pretty clear, like science competencies. You should be able to understand living systems. You should be able to understand human behavior. Those are things that are seen in your MCAT and your GPA, as well as things like quantitative reasoning. Some parts of the MCAT have math on it. You're required to take a year of math, written communication, and your personal statement, work and activities. But some of them are more abstract, like empathy and compassion, ethical responsibility to self and others, interpersonal skills, things that are a little bit harder to see in your work and activities, and letters of recommendation, but are important nonetheless to try and convey if they're important to you. I bring these up because if you look through these core competencies and any of them really resonate with you, for example, interpersonal skills or oral communication or reliability and dependability, and you think those really speak to you, then it is your job as a writer to make sure that your stories, your activities, the way that you're writing really convey that that is a core value of yours. You're not going to be perfect at all 17 of these, but there are going to be 2, 3, or 4 competencies that you want to stand out as being exemplary of. And I think this application does a good job of picking his spots and doing a good job to be repetitive in different ways with different activities to hammer home that value again and again and again. For me, it's this maturity motif, almost this like, I would say either reliability and dependability or resilience and adaptability that he continues to hammer home on his application. The second concept is this past profiles, which is very interesting because it has the benefit of 2020 hindsight vision. What I mean by that is what they do is they interview current medical students, people who have gotten in, as well as the people who admitted them to their school, right? The admissions officers that actually said, yes, please come to our school. You learn about their journey and what stood out to the medical school. So I'll just click a random one here. Yamasaki has a quote here, and you'll see the strongest competencies that the students self-identified. And so even though they're doing this for the student profiles, us as premeds can do this as well so that we're intentionally deciding which of these core competencies we want to pop, right? She wanted to be known for her cultural humility, reliability, and scientific inquiry. And if you want to be known for those core competencies, you'll want to make sure that your writing reflects those core competencies. And what I love, and most people will not see because it's all the way at the bottom and takes a lot of time to get to, is you will see not only why I chose Western Michigan University, which you can read for other schools and get a sense of kind of what makes them special, but this paragraph I think is gold. Why Western Michigan University chose I. There are very few places on the internet where an admissions committee member will share exactly why they said, I'm accepting this person. And Ms. Shelton, I think, is an admissions officer. Strong application. Personal statement is truly personal and preparation for medical school is strong. Invest their time wisely and manage to avoid the typical pre-med applicant checkbox level activities. Most importantly, she was able to be confident in the interviews. Her material showed us she could handle material, but her personal attributes helped show us that she would be an asset. So you want to be an asset. You want to avoid the pre-med applicant checkbox. Further, ISPATS in medical school shows that there isn't a right way, right? So in my opinion, this is gold because if you are a non-traditional pre-med and you're afraid that your journey isn't like other folks's, you can see that Western Michigan University actually valued that. While she has a biology degree and aptitude for science, she followed her passion and explored things that she truly enjoyed. More evidence that this is the right move. This honest passion was able to shine through the application and interview process. Also throughout medical school, these varied interests in art and music have given her an outlet outside of studying. And what I love is that they break down her application into the core competencies. So she said, let's say what she wanted to do, cultural humility, reliability, and dependability. So if we look at, cultural humility, they broke that down and said, where is the evidence that she is culturally humble? Well, she volunteered in Vietnam and Japan. She studied Chinese. She's a bilingual, bicultural Japanese American. Where is the evidence that she has reliability and dependability? Shadowed HEMONC during junior year of high school, tutoring while in undergrad, job on campus while in undergrad. So you want to choose your highlighted competencies, choose 3 or 4 of them, and make it very clear that these are going to be the highlights of your application. And if you want to be really advanced, which is what we do with all of our students, is try to write what you want an admissions committee member to say about you when they choose to accept you. Try to make this profile for yourself, because when you do that intentionally and proactively, you can now guide your writing to say, okay, well, I want medical school X to feel ABC about me. And if I want them to feel ABC about me, then I'm going to make sure I prioritize that activity, and that story so that they can naturally come to the conclusion that I highlight XYZ competency. This is a way to make sure that your application is not just a hodgepodge of random things that fall together, but it's intentionally, proactively, and well thought out in a way that starts with the highlighted core competencies, which medical schools are looking for, reverse engineers them back to the actual activities that demonstrate those values. And so you can nicely walk an admissions committee member down this path that you've paved for them to get to the conclusion about you and your application that you want them to end up with. That is how you take this super nerdy admission stuff and use it to your advantage. And here's an example of an application that does just that. So I think there's a couple of things. We don't have to go through the entire application because not all of them have that exemplary motif of maturity and these repetitive themes, but I'll highlight the ones that I think are important. First and foremost, let's just start from the top. We have a 3.67, 3.77 slower start to your science courses. In fact, he ends up getting a C+ in math, an A- in Gen Chem Genetics, A- in physics. Slow start, but there's an upward trend that picks it up. So if you are in this point where I covered my screen with my hand, but unfortunately it doesn't cover on your end. Let me just cover it with my face. But if you're a freshman here and you're starting with a 3.67 and you're really bummed, you say, I can't be a doctor. Remember, this application got into UCSF. Just know you can continue to fight and get that upward trend, and your GPA will recover. Even if you're on that second year sophomore GPA of a 3.77, still plenty of time to recover. 4.0, 4.0, and that really changes the game for this applicant. Ends with a strong 3.86, and with the non-science credits ends with a strong 3.89, essentially a 3.9, right? Strong MCAT score always solves a lot of problems, and it's a well-balanced MCAT score at that. All right, so I think perhaps before this, yes, we have the disadvantage section as well as the institutional action. So disadvantage, my parents immigrated to the U.S. when they were teenagers. They went to high school and settled down in Louisiana to raise my sister and I. My father worked away from home. My mother raised us at a young age. The town we lived in had a small Asian population. As a result, my family experienced discrimination on a regular basis. We're also a low-income family, so it was difficult to establish a stable household, especially within a non-supportive community. After moving to California, my father had to stop working due to health complications. Resources were more scarce, financial burdens became more challenging. Because my parents had minimal experience with college, I had little guidance when it came to preparing for college. So you're really getting a sense of this person, right? This is not a person who grew up with grandfather going to college with a PhD, dad with a master's and and 2 bachelors in different degrees, and mom has like a triple major in the arts or something. This is a person whose parents are trying to survive and who he is designed and supposed to go to college, but doesn't really have a lot of support on that end. So throughout high school, I took the initiative to learn about the college requirements, the application process, the FAFSA, able to enroll in college and receive enough financial aid to fund my education, gave me a greater appreciation for the challenges my parents overcame in an unfamiliar country and culture to give my sister and I the best chance for our own success. Okay. So, I mean, it's just a good reminder that not all students start at the same place. Wherever you're starting, I want you to feel like you should take advantage of the strengths that you have and the privileges that you have, but also recognize that if you don't have those, that still working hard, still trying to advance yourself regardless of your starting point is something that medical schools will see and appreciate and will recognize. So context like this helps clarify one's background and appreciate the extent of their journey. Okay, now let's just move on to this institutional action. During April of my freshman year, I was responsible for underage drinking and failure to comply while living on-campus community. I received a formal warning from the dean and was sanctioned with non-academic probation. This incident was humbling because it reminded me that my actions have consequences, which was something that I failed to acknowledge as a new college student, right? Just accepting it. I realize that what I do has consequences. And while it sounds very straightforward and sounds simple, like duh, everything that you do has consequences, I appreciate it as a reader for someone to come out and say the obvious. As a result of this incident, I made it a priority to uphold the expectations and values of the university and to respect the authority of others. I did not have any further conduct violations, and this experience contributed to me becoming a resident assistant during my 3rd year. So I love how this goes ahead and says, I made this mistake, I recognized it, and not only did I overcome the mistake, but now I'm a resident assistant where I am the one who also enforces these rules, appreciating how important it is. How many people in your life do you know who makes excuses for the mistakes that they make? How many people would say, that's such a silly rule, everyone in college drinks anyway, I can't believe that they ruined my academic life by putting me on probation, my graduate school dreams are over, and it's just because of this silly rule and I just happened to be caught, right? How many people don't recognize that the rules are in place for people's safety, don't recognize that it is your job as a person to adhere to the rules, or recognize that you make your own grown-up decisions and should accept the consequences that come with them, right? How many people just say, no, it's not my fault, it's a silly rule, knowing the rule existed in the entire time? So if you could reframe that from, these are the obstacles why I won't be successful, to, whoa, this will be one heck of a story and these obstacles will make it all the more awesome, then you start to appreciate that, like, I did make a mistake and this is part of my story and it's okay. And I am learning from these obstacles and mistakes, and I can't make too many mistakes, but the mistakes that I do make, I will reflect and I will learn from. A lot of people have these institutional actions and you can tell that they still feel bitter. They still have not owned up to it. And that is not a good look for someone who is trying to get into medical school. The institutional action opens up the resident assistant opportunity and puts him in a position to guide others who have a similar experience with institutional actions, with underage drinking and things of the sort. So who knows, he may never have been an RA. Maybe he had a very supportive RA that was able to guide him through that experience, and that led him to wanting to be one himself. Again, I just appreciate the level of openness and maturity to start. Okay, so I'm going to decide now which activities we're going to go through. I don't think we need to go through all of them. All right, so let's start with this cycling in extracurricular activity, just because I love how different it is, and I love how he comes out and says that this is one of my most meaningful ones. I serve as the indoor cycling instructor at Cycle. My main role is to lead a group of 40 or more clients through a 45-minute high-intensity workout. To prepare for my classes, I spend time mapping out the class progression and create high-energy music playlists. Because our classes are rhythmically based, the music serves as the core of the workout. Working at Cycle taught me the value of excellent customer service. By making client satisfaction a top priority, I've been able to create a strong and consistent client base. The principles of quality customer service are an asset in any field that works with people, and that includes healthcare. Okay. One of my reactions always to work and activity sections is that you don't ever need to feel the pressure to connect everything to medicine. If you worked at a cycling job and you liked the cycling job because it taught you customer service and it taught you how to be reliable and dependable to a group, to a community that is looking to you to give them a great workout, that can be it, right? You don't have to connect everything to medicine. And sometimes I say that because it feels like a stretch. In this case, it doesn't. I think medicine and working as a cycling instructor, you have to battle egos, you have to balance interests, you have to work hard to make people happy. So I get it. But point number one, don't feel the need to connect everything to medicine. Number two, I just love these details, right? You let us into the window of life as a cyclist teacher. The details are awesome. As someone who has joined exercises classes in the past, you know that what really happens for me, at least from my perspective, is I rush out the door late as always, try to get a towel on my way in, find one of the bikes, and there's only like bikes in the back because I'm dead last in the class, and the class has started 2 minutes ago, and I'm just trying to like cycle and catch up with people, haven't warmed up or anything. But from his perspective, it's
I have a group of 40 people. There's probably some middle-aged people that have come in the past. There's also really young people. I got to figure out what my progressions are so that everyone can enjoy the music. What music should I do this time? Because last week it was very hip-hop based, but maybe this week I want to try something new. And maybe 2 days ago I was playing with other kind of rhythms in my own apartment, seeing if these drops would land and that playlist would transition well to that song. So I just love these details of him showing the preparation up to a class, because we're honestly not privy to it. I just show up, I bike, and then I try to have a good time, and then I leave, right? But for him, it's a different experience. By working at Psycho, I learned to be more adaptive and mindful when it comes to working with a diverse population. Before I became an instructor, my involvements were mostly within the academic community, where I was surrounded by like-minded individuals. This made it easy to get along with and relate to my peers. Our client base at the studio is more heterogeneous and includes people that have a variety of different backgrounds, perspectives, values, and beliefs. In the past, some clients have expressed opinions that oppose my deepest values, and initially I was uncomfortable approaching them with the same enthusiasm and eagerness that I had with clients that I got along with. However, I reminded myself that it is my responsibility to treat every client equally and quickly learn to put aside my personal views so that I could focus on doing so. As a physician, I will be working with a heterogeneous patient populations, and that means I will encounter patients with a variety of belief systems. Regardless of their beliefs, every patient deserves quality health care and a physician who is willing to do everything in their power to serve them well. My experience and the lessons I learned by interacting with our clients will support me in becoming a physician. So again, this is a great window in his level of maturity and his willingness to not be afraid to admit his thoughts and his biases. I find it I appreciate it, especially in today's culture where one can get canceled pretty quickly when people admit that they had a belief that they now understand is not right for them or is wrong for them. And they share their journey into recognizing that even though this was my inherent bias, I have worked to change that, and that's okay because I wasn't born with perfect levels of thought. I wasn't born without bias. And I appreciate that because a lot of people don't even, they almost presume that they're holier than thou and they were born perfect without any biases. And that isn't the case for this individual. He says that, I did feel uncomfortable helping or working out with these clients who had different belief systems than I, but I reminded myself that I'm here. I have a job to give this community an exercise class worth coming to. And that is regardless of what they believe at home. And I appreciate that professionalism and that level of maturity. And I'm glad that he shared a window into his inner mental struggle and dialogue. This is the type of physician that I would want to have with those types of values to serve anyone that comes in through the door. A clear demonstration that reflection, right? This is a indoor cycling instructor. Not a lot of people would say, oh my God, I have to be an indoor cycling instructor as a pre-med because that's the thing that will get me into medical school. In fact, I've never heard anyone say that. But this is a clear demonstration that any activity inherently has lessons for you to chew and reflect on, and it's reflection itself that helps you get the most out of these extracurriculars. You have to take away the lessons from the activity. The activity itself is not the thing that gets you into medical school. It's the growth and the character development that you grab from an activity that is the thing that you bring with you into medical school. Okay. All right, I think most of the work and activities, there's not too much from the conclusions that I want to take away from. So I'm going to jump straight to the personal statement and let us see what we can take away from it. John and I met several times during office hours to review physiology and work through problem sets. We spent countless hours together, so I expected John to excel in the course. However, he turned in every lab report late and his work failed to convey and understand the material. As I marked his reports, I became increasingly frustrated, believing all of our work together had been in vain. Again, I love how straightforward he is, right? He holds John to an expectation. He is disappointed in John when he doesn't meet that expectation, and he's honest about it. How many pre-med students would just beat around the edge and say, oh, John tried his hardest, and I don't know, John maybe just had some stuff going on, and I don't expect anything of John, right? No. He is forthright and says, I worked hard with you. I want you to do well, and I'm holding you to the standard. And I'm telling you that I'm becoming increasingly frustrated because I feel like all this time has been a waste. Most pre-meds would be scared to admit something like that, and I appreciate this level of honesty. At the end of the term, John sent a heartfelt email thanking me for being a supportive and dedicated TA. He then apologized for missing his deadlines and explained he had been working full-time to support his education and his family, which had made it difficult for him to find the time to work on his reports. I instantly felt ashamed for judging him so quickly, but was humbled to learn how John's family circumstances had influenced his schoolwork. What I wrote here is I love the honesty. It's a recurring motif that he's able to own up to his mistakes. Same thing with the institutional action, right? He is able to come out and say, this is the thought that I held. Same thing with the cycling instructor. I did not want to support people who did not have the same beliefs as I. Same thought here. I held John to a standard, he failed it, and I was frustrated. It's just a very honest guy who is able to share his honest opinions. And then the most beautiful thing about all this is he's open-minded and willing to admit when he's wrong. I said I'm a professional and I'm going to give you a great cycling class no matter your beliefs. I recognize that underage drinking has consequences, and I appreciate what those rules and that experience had taught me. And then I became an RA myself. Number 3, I instantly felt ashamed for judging John, and I thank him for humbling me to help me understand how family circumstances influence what you do and how you perform at school. 3 clear recurring motifs of him dropping his ego and saying, I was wrong, here's what I learned, and here's how I changed. I forged a deep understanding of the far-reaching effects of life circumstances when I served as an RA. During my RA year, residents would often seek my support, but in one incident, I had to reach out to a resident of concern. Started off the year as an outgoing member of the community. Her warm personality was enough to brighten anyone's day, but in the middle of the term, I noticed she'd become reclusive and guarded. Something more was happening. When we sat down to talk, she disclosed that she had been the victim of sexual assault, and the trauma had impacted her mental and physical health. So you can see he's proactivity, the duty to act, the details and the pressure that victims face feel so real here. So let's talk about that. She initially refused to talk about it due to the fear of being blamed or branded a liar. By approaching her with compassion, I created a space where she felt safe to speak about her harrowing experience. As she spoke, I did my best to validate her concerns, fears, and emotions, but knew this was a situation I was not equipped to handle on my own, and referred her to professionals and organizations that could provide further assistance. Through this experience, I realized that providing an outlet for someone to share their hardships creates a space where healing can begin. Again, this guy is demonstrating his ability to drop his ego, to do whatever he can up until that point, and then recognize that it's not about him, that it's about this other person. It's about the member who comes to his cycling class. It's about John, who's trying his hardest to balance school and life. This is another example where the author recognizes that this sexual assault victim, this experience is bigger than himself. He does not need to be the hero of the story. How many premeds would wrap up that story and say, thank goodness I was there to listen to this student's experience, and just by lending an ear, I was able to save a life, right? No. The humility to put that person first and not take any credit for it, and refer this person to another organization or another set of resources that are better equipped so that she can get the help that she needs, is applaudable. It is another demonstration of this value of humility and egolessness. 2 years later, while volunteering at the free clinic, I had the opportunity to participate in clinical care Throughout the clinical day, a few fourth-year medical students taught me how to present patient cases and differential diagnosis. They urged me to try my own using cases they had seen during their rotations. Arriving at the correct diagnosis by integrating my knowledge of physiology was exciting, especially in the context of working with patients. Okay, I'm going to make a quick note here. It is awesome to be able to present your own patients as a pre-med, but to be clear, it is not necessary. I don't want anyone to feel like, oh my God, my shadowing experiences, I haven't gotten to the point where I can present them. That's okay, you don't need to. While most patients at the clinic were receptive to the clinicians and me, one proves unusually difficult. Whenever I asked her to fill out forms, she became apprehensive and combative. Despite receiving medication, her diabetes hardly improves, and even the physicians had a hard time communicating with her. It was difficult to understand this patient's resistance, especially since we all had the same goal. However, one physician saw beyond this patient's chart and symptoms and made an effort to understand her broader life circumstances. In the process, she discovered the patient was undocumented and severely food insecure. As the physician acknowledged and validated the obstacles created by their social background, she connected the patient with a social worker who navigated her through different programs that could offer further support. The patient was also enrolled in the food prescription program so she could obtain nutritious foods to offset her sugar and fat-rich diet. By using a broader understanding of the patient's background, physicians were able to create a multifaceted healthcare plan that proved more effective than treating only the clinical presentations of her patient's condition. Okay, so again, you're starting to see that he is deferential, the author. This is not his superstar story. And while I do appreciate that premeds put themselves in the center of the action, I also recognize that this guy's doing a great job of just recognizing when it is his turn to act and take the stage and when it is his turn to listen, watch, and take away the lessons. So I wrote that only a physician with his multidisciplinary understanding of social circumstances and medicine could have helped this undocumented, severely food insecure patient. And it's awesome to see the author reflect on that. Underserved communities are often associated with negative stereotypes and experience social stigma as a result. During a volunteer trip, I met several female prison inmates who were struggling to support their families. Employers refused to give them a chance to redeem themselves due to the negative narrative society has created around such women. These associations are damaging because they ostracize and disadvantage certain groups, lead to a slew of social issues, including health disparities. The social justice meetings I attended as a student leader taught me that awareness through education is paramount in the effort to address these disparities, and I plan to incorporate this philosophy as a physician. So you're starting to see how he loops in his different experiences with former female prison inmates, with insecure, food insecure patients, with people, with students that he worked with as a RA, and really the thing that he's continuing to convey through all of these experiences is that he is an active reflector. He's present during these experiences. He's recognizing that there's something there to learn, and he's pulling away from it and sharing it with the reader. That ability to notice and to recognize and not let things kind of fly over your head, that is really a thing that a lot of mentors appreciate. Someone who's just telling you and showing you that they're listening and they're looking at you and they're watching and they're reflecting and they're thinking and processing. Just seeing someone do that is already a very valuable asset to have as a pre-med student, because there's a lot of things like we talked about earlier with the people that you know who make excuses for them. There's a very inherent quick ego defense that says, oh shoot, I made a mistake, let me make an excuse, let me defend myself, let me separate myself from that issue. But again and again and again and again, you're starting to see this guy lean into the biases he's have, lean into examples where he says it's not right that former female prison inmates are treated this way. And you start to appreciate the type of person he is by the ability for him to show you what he's learning in many different contexts. In my experiences, both clinical and non-clinical, I've been fortunate to interact with and learn from individuals who have taught me that people are the sum of their life experiences and background. A beautiful summary of what he's talking about in all these different examples. both of which have had profound effects on their health. I look forward to a clinical career when I can advocate for my patients and advance the efforts towards equitable access for communities in need. Again, this recurring motif that medicine is more than just drugs and surgery. He ends up applying to 49 total schools, getting accepted to UCSF, a fantastic medical school. And I am proud to call him one of my colleagues. So there's a ton to learn from this example application. And if anything, I think the biggest takeaway for me is recognizing that humility is an asset, that reflection is an asset, that you can get into even the top medical schools without crazy activities. There's not 12 publications and a bill that he published on Congress about underserved community healthcare or undocumented healthcare, right? This is just simply a guy who works hard. He recognizes that there are wrongs in the world, biases in the world, and some of them that he is affected by. He's the first to say, I made a mistake, and he's the first to say, this is how I changed my behavior to make sure that I... A lot of great things in this application, and I want you all to also just remember where these, how these kind of come across to medical school admissions committees. Remember the core competencies and what they mean. Remember which ones you think you resonate most with. A bonus exercise is to ask your loved ones, which values do you think I represent most as a person? Ask your best friend, ask your roommate, ask your loved ones. Which ones do you think really stand out to me, and what would you want medical schools to remember about me? And then point your writing to get to those values again and again and again through different examples. If I were to choose for this applicant, I would say there's a strong sense of ethical responsibility to self and others. There's a strong sense of an ability to empathize and be compassionate with others. There's a strong sense of resilience where he recognizes that he's wrong and he's able to be open-minded enough to change his mind on important things and take that with him to other activities. Create an applicant profile about yourself. Try to figure out what your strongest competencies are, what medical school you want to go to, and most importantly, why that medical school would choose you. Start with that, reverse engineer your application, and then make sure that your application has genuine evidence that you are exemplifying these core competencies. You can say that you are committed to learning and growing, but if you have no actual evidence, then that value will not come across on your application. All right, if you liked that application, you will love this application here, where another student with a 3.9 GPA, 519 MCAT, who also actually gets into UCSF, earns a full ride to a top 10 medical school. They also both have worked with incarcerated individuals, adults, and youth, respectively. And I think this one will be a great in-depth breakdown on what it takes to get into the best medical schools in the nation. Thank you for your time. Think about your core competencies, and if you want to get into the best medical schools in the nation, see how another applicant did it. I will see you in the next one. Have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.